Hey, my name is Savva. I'm also 5 years at Wix, and it's always a pleasure to be the last presenter because I'm not sure where I'm standing, either between you and your bed or you want to go home. So, as I said, I have 5 years at Wix, and during the last years, I'm focusing on everything what's related to the persistence of data, and that's what I would like to talk to you about. Specifically, can data layer be simple? Can it be easy? Yes, at least from the DevX experience.
Bullshit.
So let's see. And no, those answers were not paid. So before we deep dive into the material, I would like to start with a small overview of a classic microservice. Yes? So commonly we distinguish between it works actually, between three layers, right? Three application layers. The first one, controller. What do we do in controller? We define our API, we perform request validations, we do permissions checks, right? And a few minutes ago, Odette showed how with Nile, we inherently remove a need in this layer in Nile services, because 80% of that code can be actually auto-generated, permissions check, validations. Then there goes the business logic. That's where we write the logic itself, right? And we saw some couple of libraries and approaches that help us, help our developers to focus on the business logics instead of spending hours and hours on wiring those libraries. And last but not least, there is a data layer. And what do we do with data layer? Any guesses? Brave guesses? Why do we have data layers?
Leave data.
Yeah, so basically this layer usually encapsulates all mechanics of working with database, right? And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, we commonly use data access object pattern, yes, to implement this layer. But the question is, why do we use this pattern? Why do we use it so often? And one of the most popular answers on this question, we use DAO pattern to ease moving to another database. And I claim that this is one of the biggest misconceptions that you can face as a programmer. Because we never create a microservice with some hypothetical migration in future. We almost never do that. Because migrations are terrible, they're awkward, they're error prone. We just don't develop to migrate to something new in a couple of days, right? Makes sense. Or any objections?
Yeah, I have one. What happens when your MySQL database can't hold the volume of data anymore?
You add more. But I'll answer it, okay? But it also may happen, but it's not something that I would create in my service right from the day one, knowing that MySQL won't hold it, right?
I agree. So
perhaps the more coherent answer could be, we use DAO pattern to ensure that we have single point of responsibility that encapsulates mechanics of working with database, right? And second, that it separates our application needs from the data access patterns. Like, smart answer, but kind of makes sense. But I would really like to stress out this line. So, a couple of years ago, when we started the Nile project, we began by going over the concerns that Wix developers should take care of when they write a small CRUD service. And the list turned out to be really big, really long and big. So, first of all, as a developer, I need to define the schema of my table, right? Now, how many columns should I have, types, and so on and so forth. I'm done with that. Next thing, I need to ensure that I support multi-tenancy. Because in Wix, we store data from multiple sites, from multiple users, yes, and the last thing that we want to achieve, that data of one user leaks to the other user. Yep, I got orders of someone else. Not cool, right? So I need to ensure that we have multi-tenancy. Then I have to make sure that I'm doing connection management properly, that I have logs and metrics, that exceptions that I return makes sense, right? And then maybe I will re-implement optimistic logging in the 5th time, because why not? But all these concerns are pretty technical, and we don't end up there. One day, I can get an email from my product manager saying that, listen, Savva, from tomorrow we need to store some personal information of people, of our users. Let's say names or addresses, right? And according to the legislation, we should encrypt this data and be able to answer on GDPR requests. Reasonable, right? but handling PII and GDPR requests is not cool. Another day, my product may ask me to implement some redo operation, and then I need to implement something like soft delete or trash bin, right? It's also a complication. But note, these concerns are not technical. They are pretty much dictated by the business, right? So what we can say about this list? First of all, when we got to it, we understood that developers in Wix, even when they write a simplest CRUD service, smallest one, have to take care of tons of concerns. And for many of them, we don't have a standard solution, and we need to provide some standard solutions for them. And would it be enough? No, it wouldn't be enough. Because if we would provide only solutions for the technical moments, we would miss a lot of potential of the dev velocity, which is related to the business. So whatever we provide should be business aware. And that's how we started our journey that led us to a library that's called Simple Data Layer. Yes, spoilers, the data layer can be simple, or SDL in short. So, few core ideas that were behind, that stood behind SDL. First of all, a single instance of SDL manages a single entity, meaning that we didn't want to manage relations between different tables. Single instance, single entity, and it goes hand in hand with the size of a microservice. Single service, single responsibility, single table. Second, we really wanted to make it simple to use and that hard to make a mistake. And last but not least, uniformity of the solutions. Provide the standard solutions for standard problems. So enough of talking, what we've got. So again, developer's journey. This is like from code-based, not code-based, from code perspective. Starts with this app macro that Oded mentioned. And here we see two interesting things. Here I say that this is an entity this is a class that I'm going to store in my database, and a couple of configurations that will help us generate code. Then we go to the class definition of the stored entity itself. We see ID, we see some name. Also, we support some standard system fields that everyone would anyways add. And then the code itself looks super simple. I define the instance of a class, then I take an instance of SDL and do an update in the database. One line. But what happens behind this line? First of all, we implicitly extract tenant and organize the data, ensuring that data won't leak between the different tenants. It happens implicitly. Nothing is passed. Second, in case and my SDL is configured with optimistic locking, we will check revision. Also, we will send an event stating that this person, information of this person was updated. In case, and like in a second we will talk about it, in case and some data should be encrypted, SDL will encrypt the data. It will write logs, metrics, and if shit hits the fan, it will throw proper exception. That's saying what went wrong. Okay? One line, so many concerns. Next. Now, it brings us to a question, how this beauty works under the hood. So, under the hood, all SDL tables look the same. 3 columns. Tenant ID, entity ID, and the data as JSON. So, and there is a beauty in this simplicity, because no matter with which SDL I work with, I always know how its schema, how the table structure looks like. Okay, beautiful. But is it enough? No, right? Most probably I need some indices, right? I need to add indexes. How do I do it? Everything I do, I go back to our person class and I add annotations saying, okay, I need an index on the name, an index on the age in a static property. And from this definition, we know to create schema statement. Up until now. And now, cool. But think about it. How many possibilities this gives us? Because we have a single point that generates schema from a class definition. First of all, it gives us a possibility to build automatic flows. For example, tomorrow I add another index to the class. I merge my code to the master. From build of master, we can detect that there was a schema change. We can automatically use a schema and open ticket to DBA, or even automatically apply the change or like insert of the new index in production. Beautiful. Second, since I may know the state of the class before and after the change, I may spot breaking changes. A question to the crowd. How many, or did it happen to you that you accidentally changed type of the field that resulted in a data corruption? No, no one, oh, okay. Okay, more hands, like it happened to me. No, come on, just 3, 4, like, okay. I know it happened like to more people, okay, if you are shy. But this way, if we know like a states between of the classes before and after, we can spot it and return feedback to the developer before the code goes to production. And yeah, talking about PI and GDPR. Now, we are talking about a person class, right? And according to the legislation, personal name of a person is a PI information, right? So it should be encrypted. What should I do to encrypt this information? Just add PII annotation. It will tell SDL that this data should be stored properly. And I can go on and talk about more features that SDL has, but I won't. Because in practice, all the lists that we saw at the beginning of the presentation are real features that SDL provides. What I want to talk about is a bit different. We can always invest into functionality of a library, but functionality cannot ever come on expense of a dev experience. Never. You know this phrase, you build, they come, right? But if you build a questionable library, well, developers will come, they will take a look at this library, they will probably tell you their feedback and they will go away, okay? So never ever functionality can come on the expense of dev experience. So how can we achieve it? First of all, provide feedback to developer as fast as possible, as whenever possible, preferably at the build time. I did something wrong, my build just doesn't compile. Yes, I cannot proceed. If you cannot provide feedback at the build time, make it on runtime or startup time. Yes, I cannot just start my service, I cannot run my test without getting an exception. Second thing, clear APIs. APIs without ambiguity. And it sounds nice and fun, but just let me give you one example of how it may look like. I'll take optimistic locking as an example. Small recap, what optimistic locking is. Optimistic locking says following thing. I have a record in the database, and it has a revision. Cool? I can update this entity if and only if the revision of entity that I have in hand matches revision in the database. If revisions don't match, it means that the record was updated and I should fail. Simple? Questions? Cool. So SDL can be configured with or without optimistic locking, up to you, depending on your use case, right? But think about it. This may change actually the signature of SDL methods. If my SDL works without optimistic locking, then there is no need to add revision on any method. If it works with optimistic locking, then yes, I may need to add the revision here and there. So what do? The naive approach would be to deliver a library with 2 overloaded methods. Simple, right? But in terms of dev experience, I get this library, I configured my SDL with optimistic locking, and I'm not sure what should I use, right? It's confusing. So that's where we actually go an extra mile and we provide semantic builders. So if my SDL works without optimistic locking, then we will generate methods accordingly without revision. And with optimistic locking, we will add revision where it's properly. So there is no ambiguity. OK. Questions after? I'm not stopping. And this leads me to another point. As probably some of you know, probably some of you heard, in Wix we strongly believe in API-first approach and platformization and standardization of our APIs. And it goes from naming guidelines, or starts with naming guidelines, and ends with reusing of the same patterns across different services and same solutions across different across different APIs. And as part of this effort, we developed what's called Wix Query DSL. It's internal DSL for filtering. Okay, nothing fancy. So SDL supports this DSL out of the box. You can receive this DSL, or this query, at the endpoint, and just throw it into SDL, and SDL will know what to do with it. Okay? Sounds good. But we went like a couple of miles more, and technically we don't allow, like SDL supports only WixQL and doesn't allow you to submit native SQL queries. And there are several reasons for that. Is it opinionated? Yes, but it gives us a lot of benefits. First of all, it gives us ability to tell our developers which operators are supported. Yes, so basically if operator is not in Query DSL, it's not supported. Second benefit, since we know the DSL, it's quite easy to parse it and give our developers feedback. For example, like this is an example of the DSL. Let's say this means like age, like I'm looking for someone like with age above 16, right? If I receive a query and instead of integer here I will get, I don't know, like a boolean or string, yes, I can return an exception, a meaningful exception, saying, okay, I'm sorry, my dear, you're trying to, I was expecting for integer, I get string. Yes? And above all of this, knowing the Query DSL, we can provide more wrappers like responses with pagination, with cursoring queries, and so on and so forth. Okay? And to sum up, I would like to again focus your attention on two things. First of all, treat your platform as a product. Again, if you provide a library, if you provide a solution with a questionable API, nobody would just want to use it. They will just look at it and abandon it and build their own solutions. And the second point that I would like to put your attention on is this one. We as developers tend to provide solutions to technical problems. I need an optimistic locking. I need a solution for tenancy, right? And it's good and it's right, but it's not enough. Because true hypervelocity lies in providing solutions for business problems. That's what pushes our velocity forward, I guess. Thanks.